Hello again, this is Katrina Kramlich from Inspired Spectrums, and in this video I want to talk about how to handle crying and whining. So in a perfect world, you would never have any crying and whining, but alas, it does happen. The good news is the more you practice these techniques, the less it will happen. But it happens from time to time, and that's okay. The first thing you and I need to do when you get crying and whining is really find a comfortable place within yourself that you're going to be able to handle this effectively. Okay, crying and whining happens, right? But it's your job as the facilitator of this child to really help him work through this in the most efficient way possible. Okay, so the more he is able to handle himself and move through a tantrum quickly to a place where he is again communicating, the easier it's going to be for him for the rest of his life, right? Crying doesn't get us what we want. We don't actually, well, hopefully it may, but that's not something that we want to teach. We want to teach that crying is actually the opposite of helpful, and it makes things a lot harder, right? So we want to help a child work through that. And the first way to do that is be calm ourselves, okay? Like I've told you before, these children with autism are very in tune with how we're feeling. So if they think that by crying and whining, they're going to push our buttons enough to the point where we may give in, they're going to do it, right? So you want to be strong and comfortable. And part of that for me is really believing that my child is doing the best he can in this moment. And so am I. And by really remaining calm and okay in this situation, I'm going to actually help him move through this quicker. So that's what I hold on to. So just like speaking, when a child speaks, we're going to move fast and we're going to respond really quickly to those spoken words. Crying and whining, we're going to do the opposite. So we're actually going to move slower and become kind of dumber when a child cries. And you want your whole demeanor to suddenly, so that we really are showing the child that it's not that effective for them to cry. Explain a little bit, some of these techniques are going to work differently with every kid, like we said, but for the majority of kids, you might want to explain a little bit about whatever it is you think maybe they are crying about. If it's over the door, you can explain what time you're leaving. If they're crying about food, you can explain the next time you're going to get a snack. Whatever it is they might be crying about, if it's a boundary, you can explain it briefly. You can also try to do that slow. You can also try to slowly offer them things that they might be wanting. So I'm not really sure why you're crying. It's not really understandable for me. You could always tell me with your words, or you could show me. Maybe you wanted these glasses? Maybe you wanted some eat? Offer them things slowly. Always model the appropriate word. If they do, for some reason, take one of those things and say, oh, you could just tell me eat. Make sure you model the word. And if they do ever calm down in the middle of that and say a word, then, of course, quickly respond. However, if, you could also try to cuddle your child. Most of the time when kids are crying, especially if it's a sensory overload thing or things like that, they may not want that. If a child really gets into a tantrum, then it tends to be, what I've seen is it tends to be that the more talking you do or explaining or trying to offer things, actually it tends to escalate the situation. So if you see that, then the best technique to do is really just give them their space. Hopefully you're in the playroom. The playroom is a safe place where, if they need to cry, they can feel free to cry. But while you're in the playroom, you really want to model the fact that you don't need to cry, and that you can actually still be happy no matter what's going on, and that you can regulate yourself. So you go into a different corner of the room. Even you might want to turn your back to them, take all your energy off them so that they have a chance to regulate, and just play quietly by yourself until they calm down. And if they calm down to a point where you can join them, then turn and just start to join. Or if maybe they might even come over and try to cuddle or something like that. Occasionally you will get a child who will come over and try to get you to do something. So, they might come over and try to hit you, or they might come over and try to get you to open the door or something like that. And in those moments, go with them, or of course if they hit you, block yourself and and move away. But if they're trying to get you to go to the door, things like that, just go with them. But once you realize that they're trying to get to the door, just explain that you can't do that, and then go right back to your thing. They will. I mean, some kids will keep going with us for a while, but the good news is not after they realize that it's not going to work, they won't do it for the rest of the year. They might escalate this for a couple days, but after they realize that you're going to remain the same, you're going to remain calm and comfortable, you're not going to give in to any of that crying, then they're going to stop using it as much, unless they're, of course, in an extreme sensory overload, then they might still cry. But they're not going to use it as a form of trying to get something from you. They may still use it at home if their parents don't use this, but they'll at least know with you that crying's not going to work. So that's the good news. Just quickly on hitting, because I don't think I have that anywhere else. So if a child does hit you, that's the same sort of thing, hitting, biting, pinching. You want to move slowly with that. You want to not react, because a lot of times the quick reactions are going to be exciting to a child. So we want to do the sort of opposite of that if you can. Most of the time, I mean, for the kids that you're working with, they're younger, they're smaller. Hopefully it's really not going to be that big of a deal if they tend to strike out at you. You could just gently block it and turn away. If you have a big therapy ball or a pillow or something you can use to just sort of put yourself in the corner and let them hit that. A lot of times when there's a behavior like that, just moving yourself away and then giving a child an alternative. So, if you want to hit, that's okay. You can just go over here and hit this ball. If you need to pinch something, why don't you go pinch this little, puppet we have? That's okay. If you want to pull somebody's hair, why don't you go pull this stuffed animal? So give them that alternative, but you're also not giving them any reaction from you. So they're realizing that, pulling your hair is not going to work because they're going to just go pull the puppet hair. So take care of yourself, but try to be as calm as possible and non-reactive so that they just see that those behaviors aren't going to work on you. Okay, and if it's something serious, we can talk about how to handle that later too. And of course, you have excellent staff to help you with that too. But generally, these techniques work. By not responding to crying, whining, hitting, pinching, any of that stuff, the child will eventually realize that it's not going to work and they're going to stop using that stuff on you. If it's a sensory need, you want to try to help them take care of that for themselves. So, and then when they speak again using words, then respond fast and excitedly again. So you'll be amazed at how much this works. And nowadays, I know it sounds silly, but I love it when a kid cries because I know that I'm a safe place for them to work through these issues. If they're crying out there in the middle of a classroom, it's going to be difficult because then they've got all these kids' energies on them. But if they're going to do that in the playroom with me, that's the best place for them to cry because they can work on handling themselves, they can work on self-regulating in an environment that's going to be safer for them. So it's a good thing if they can learn those skills when they're with you. Good luck.